Hello, everybody. I've just started this stream a couple of minutes early to give chance for everybody to come in and get yourselves comfortable, get a paper, cup of tea, biscuits, whatever it is that you need to make the next 40 minutes or so pass the way that you would like it to go. If there are people already joining us, please do open up the comments and tell us who you are and where you are coming from. One of the wonderful things about these webinars that we have on a regular basis at Belbin is that we tend to attract quite a global audience, which makes sense, doesn't it? Because Belbin is the global language of teams. So if you did want to just write in the comments and tell us who you are and where you are joining us from, that would be fantastic, but don't feel that you have to. It's okay. In fact, I should go first, shouldn't I? My name's Jo Keeler, and I am here at Belbin HQ, and we are in a village just outside of Cambridge. And at the moment, the skies are still bluish. There's a lot of cloud happening now. If you're in the UK, you'll know it's been raining forever. But it seems like it's slightly better day to day. I have been kicked out of my normal place, however, that I normally run these webinars. So I'm at my desk. So hopefully everything will go smoothly. In the background, we have Elliot, who is our IT support, and he is just going to check that everything works okay. So I'll just give everybody a minute or so for it to start, make sure that everybody is ready. And then we'll start this webinar, which is all about self-sabotaging teams, which is an interesting subject, isn't it? And I think we may have all worked either in them, with them. We've definitely experienced some of that behaviour that self-sabotaging teams show. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you very soon. Okay, so let's make a start. So it's definitely 2 o'clock from what I can gather here. So lovely to see you all. My name is Jo Keeler and I am the Managing Director here at Belbin. We are currently streaming this via several different platforms, be it on StreamYard, LinkedIn. I'm not sure if Facebook's worked, very rarely does, YouTube. So we're streaming on various different platforms. So hopefully I'll be able to see all of the comments as we go through, but many apologies if I miss yours. Okay, so what are we talking about? Over the next 40 minutes or so, we will be talking about self-sabotaging teams. I think we've all come across these teams at some point in our careers. Hopefully we haven't actually been in too many of them. Hopefully we've been there to help them and to advise them. Why are we looking at self-sabotaging teams? Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because at Belbin, we deal with teams day in, day out. That is what we do. We help teams work better together. We help them to become more effective, more high performing, although we know that high performing teams are relatively rare and they do need a lot of commitment from everybody involved. But that's what we do. We work with teams. And so when we see various articles written in the press that we take here in the Belbin head office, sometimes things catch our eye because it's looking at something from a slightly different perspective. And that's what happened here. We were looking at Harvard Business Review, and Victoria Brown, who is our head of research and development, came across a wonderful article called Fixing a Self-Sabotaging Team. And we looked at this and we thought, there's a lot of resonance. We were nodding our heads to a lot of the comments that were being made. And so Vicky wrote an article. And we thought that we would do a webinar as well, just talking through the different elements of sabotaging teams. What does a self-sabotaging team mean? And what do we see? What do we experience? And most importantly, how can we help them? This is being recorded, so hello if you're watching the recording. So please, feel free to sit back. You can watch it again at your leisure. But if you did want to have any comments as we were going through this webinar, please do click on the comments button. I think it's on the right-hand side. It is on my screen. I don't know where it is on yours. And please do post a comment. It would be lovely to hear from you. Okay, let's get started. So what is a a self-sabotaging team? Well, it's when teams do or don't do things that block their success or prevent them from accomplishing goals. So, something that the teams are doing to stop them hitting their objectives, and they're doing it to themselves. When does this tend to happen? Well, it tends to happen when teams are under a lot of stress, under a lot of pressure, when things aren't going well, and that they don't have the coping mechanisms, the understanding to be able to cope with that. So maybe it's a team that's never had to cope with stress in the past. It could be a new team that hasn't spent enough time, you know how important this is, enough time right at the beginning to be able to understand the dynamics and how they need to work together. So once teams come under stress, they don't have the mechanisms, they can tend to be what we call self-sabotaging. They stop themselves from reaching the goals that they're meant to reach. Okay, so this is from the study by Anand and Barstow. I'm just going to show it again here. Here we go. I like to show evidence. I'm a bit of a specialist. I like to show, we haven't made this up. It's all in here. And I'll put the link to the article in the email that we will send out probably tomorrow. So they talk about a pack mentality. And you see it all over the world, but it's also very relevant to work teams. When that anxiety just goes to a level where nobody can deal with it, the team tries to do something to counter it. And they tend to work as a pack. They come together. They have a together mentality. It defends itself. It looks out for itself. All that matters is the team. And this is where problems can lie. One element I will put in quite early here is that when we've come across this in the work that we do with teams, we find it's less likely to happen when the team size is small. For those of you who know me know this is a bit of a subject of mine, is that if a team is too big, so maybe over 7, 8, starting getting towards those double figures, individual voices are lost. And so you can get a bit more of a pack mentality in that case. Whereas if you're dealing with teams of 4, maybe 5, that's less likely to happen. It doesn't say it doesn't happen, but it's less likely to, because everybody has a very distinctive contribution to that team, even when it's incredibly stressy. So, and so there is a team size factor that is at play here. So during this article, which is I really would recommend a read, it talks about the psychology of this pack mentality. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating read. And what they've done is they've identified different mechanisms that teams can undertake to be able to, just cope with the stress. What is it that they do? What is it that makes them self-sabotaging? What is it that stops them from getting their goal? So we're going to go through these, and we're going to put a Belbin slant on them as we go through. So these are the 5 here. They talk about the scapegoat. They talk about the soul savior, the dynamic duo. They talk about fight mode, and they talk about flight mode as well. In a way, these are 5 clusters of symptoms, because it's not as if they're holding a sign up and saying, this is where we are at the moment. What we need to be able to do is look for the symptoms. What's happening? How can we tell and work out which of these coping mechanisms the team is undertaking at the time? I don't think this list is exhaustive. I think there are variations. I think with lots of these things, this is quite simplistic. But I think that's good, because we need a starting point, don't we? We need a starting point to start understanding these teams. And like I said before, when we were looking through the article, each of these resonated. We had examples for each and every one of them, which we're going to share some of those with you today. Okay, so let's get started. The scapegoat. I don't know if any of you will find this familiar. And that's when the team is feeling uncomfortable. And instead of trying to understand why they feel uncomfortable, to try and understand the person who's making them feel uncomfortable, they just try and eliminate that discomfort. So that one person suddenly becomes the reason why nothing's working. They are the scapegoat. They are the reasons why the team isn't working as it should. We often find this when there is an imbalance of team role behaviours. For those of you who are familiar with Belbin, that will make sense. For those of you who aren't so familiar, obviously we need 9 clusters of behaviour, 9 team roles for a team to be successful. They're not needed all of the time, but they're needed. And they need to be, people need to be aware what those contributions are. Now, sometimes what happens is we have a team and it's not really balanced. It has more team role contributions than others. And so sometimes that means that we get this scapegoat. I love how Vicky put this in the article, actually. And I'm going to use team role language. I hope that's okay. She put that maybe what the scapegoat could be that lone monitor evaluator trying to hold the reins in a team of resource investigator and shaper, the only voice of caution and reason in a culture that wants action and change. That resonates. That resonates a lot, where you've got a whirlwind of energy from the shaper and the resource investigator. The shaper behavior is one that gets things done, overcomes obstacles, makes sure that there's no problems in the way, happy to challenge, have internal anxiety just to make sure that you get there. Along with the resource investigator who's socially bold, has high energy, is opportunistic, knows everybody, and between them, you've got whirlwinds of activity. Imagine being the lone monitor evaluator, the one that takes the emotion out of the decision-making process, who weighs up the pros and cons, who makes sure that everything is going in the right direction, has been properly thought through, isn't rushed. Imagine being that lone voice in that whirlwind of energy. Of course, it's very uncomfortable to hear that somebody doesn't agree with you, who's saying, slow down, have you considered it? So very often that lone voice, the monitor evaluator in this case, is the reason why nothing's working. Again, we can use the example of the sole plant in a sea of implementers, trying to make a case for innovation, but apparently it's not the way we do things around here. So again, with the implemented behavior, what we have is very process driven. Somebody who's very organized, gets that work done, is very practical, has A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way through, has every part of the procedure written down. If a team is full of people with high implementer, and then there's that lone plant who is the innovator, who wants to look at things differently, again, they are often seen as the scapegoat, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they're doing something different. And when everybody's under pressure, when the stress levels are there, that is seen as the reason why things are going badly. I'm going to give some more examples of this because this is something I think we see quite a lot, and we can see it as well when we use our team reports. It's something which, as facilitators, we make sure we check before we work with teams. If you're familiar with Belbin, you'll know that this is what we call a Belbin Team Report. And this is just one page of that, and it's generated once individuals have completed the self-perception inventory and asked for observer feedback, which is crucial. Once that data's in, our system into place allows you to play with that data to your heart's content. You've got the behaviors of everybody at your fingertips, and you can put teams together and say, well, how would these people work together? Looking at just their behaviors. So I don't know if you can read that here. I'm having to put my glasses on. So it's giving an idea here that this team is likely to rest on its professional experience, its capacity for analysis and diagnosis. The team possesses a good steering mechanism once it gets moving. As to the vehicle itself, the team must try to ensure that its engine is in good order. The team should focus attention on its capacity for action and on the demands of the outside world. If that aspect is properly covered, this team is well equipped to achieve its goals itself. So we're talking about a high monitor evaluator specialist team which has low coordinator team worker. So it's going to be a well-considered team. They're not going to make decisions quickly. They are going to be the right decisions, and they are going to have a wealth of knowledge in that particular area. But when things go not to plan, when teams are under stress, what tends to happen is we tend to be even more of our team roles. We tend to sort of exaggerate those behaviors that people can see and which are available in the team. And this means it's harder for that team role, which is at the bottom here, in this case, coordinator, to make its voice heard. And this is why sometimes it becomes that scapegoat. And this is an example somebody once gave me, a consultant who works in the States. They were working with a computer company. And they had lots of computer programmers, highly technical people. They're working in a team, but they weren't achieving their objectives. And what was happening is the stress was on. They had a lot of pressure put on them to achieve, and they were going into themselves even more. They were double checking everything. They were a deep dive into their subject areas. So what happened is they decided, not the team, but outside of the team, decided to recruit somebody in, and they decided to recruit a coordinator, a high coordinator in. And what happened is that the team didn't respect the coordinator. They didn't want the coordinator. And what the heck does the coordinator know? They haven't got this subject knowledge. They're always talking broad levels. They're always talking about, how to delegate and the people element of things. They don't understand what it is that we do. And so the reason we're not working well as a team, you may have brought somebody else in, but it's their problem. It's they're who are causing the issue. Sound familiar? What happened is one of our consultants, accredited practitioner, went into the team and were able to give them this language of Belbin, because they didn't know this language at the time. And they ran an exercise. As many of you who are accredited, you will know it's called the round the room exercise, where you put each of the team roles around the room and you ask everybody to stand by their top team role. And then you ask everybody to stand by their secondary team role and then their team role number 9. And for this team, it was a eureka moment, because all of the team stood by either monitor, evaluator, or specialist, apart from the manager, who was a coordinator. When the rest of the team had to go and stand by their bottom role, they all moved en masse to coordinator. And the coordinator moved a lonely walk across the room to that of monitor evaluator. They then realized the difference. And in fact, understanding what the coordinator could bring was that broader, being able to communicate with outside of the team, being able to coordinate with the rest of the organization was really crucial. They had that moment. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, we've been blaming you, but we now realize how much we need you. We now recognize and appreciate difference. But it took that intervention for that realization to happen. Got a couple of more examples here. Here we have a high team worker implementer culture. And this is a team that we have worked with over the last year or so. And what they're having problems with, obviously, they're under a lot of pressure at the moment. And they are beginning to really start to look inwards as a team, become self-sabotaging. They have process, and they have a very caring, relationship-driven team. They recruited somebody because they thought they needed a culture add. They wanted somebody different to them to be able to drive them forward. They appreciated that's what they needed. So they brought somebody in who was really high shaper. But what they forgot really to look at is, how are they then going to take to that person? And they didn't take, because actually this person was a really high shaper, but was showing also a lot of the allowable weaknesses. So it was never, ever going to work. And again, the shaper that's your fault. This is why it isn't working. You're going to take the blame for the reason the team isn't performing. So what they did then is said, right, well, they got rid of the manager, but they thought a little bit more about it. Yes, they wanted a culture add, something different to what they already had, but they also needed a culture fit for it to be acceptable to the current culture. So what they recruited was somebody who was high shaper, but also high team worker. They do exist. And so you had somebody who was able to go into that relationship role, but also able to drive at the same time. So from going from a scapegoat to that difference, to be able to be appreciated by the team. Now, it took a while. It doesn't happen overnight. And here we have again that outward looking, ideas driven. Let's think of all the different ways we can do something. And then blaming those implement and monitor evaluators for why, things aren't working. Oh, they're always being so negative, we're not going to talk to them. Oh, they're always so practical and telling us why things can't be done. Again, we have problems there when it comes to the scapegoat, trying to think of people who the reason why it can't happen. Of course, it makes sense, doesn't it, when you look at these team reports? It's all quite logical. And that's because once you have that language of Belbin, you can start appreciating, that's where the difference is. People don't have time, they're stressed, they're under a lot of pressure. Sometimes they just can't accept that difference. They're just seeing it as too difficult. Therefore, they're going to be blamed for the reason the team isn't working. But give some people some space, sometimes a language, a visual, being able to understand that it's not about you as a person, it's not your personality, it's about the behavior. That is where difference really does happen. Okay, so there we have the scapegoat. What else do we have here? We have the sole savior, the one person who was there to save the day. And because they're there, the rest of the team completely give up their sense of responsibility and they pin it all onto this one person. And by doing so, they are holding their hands up. I'm not taking responsibility for this. We have so and so. They are our savior. They will be able to do everything. Now, I think we saw a lot of this during COVID. Those first few weeks, nobody really knew what was going on. Suddenly we couldn't be in the office. Everybody had to just grab their laptops and run. We had in that situation, I think, a reliance on the shaper behavior, because the shaper was like, right, let's get this done. And we need to get now. There wasn't any time for discussion. There wasn't any time to work through the best ways. Nobody knew. So we relied a little bit on the shape of an organization just to give us direction, focus, energy, direction. What is it that we're meant to do? Thank you very much. And that was great for that crisis, wasn't it? We can rely on that person to make the decisions because we don't really know how we're even working together, whether or not we have an organization. We've got no idea what's going on. Let's rely on that shape of behavior. Teams that worked well together, who had an understanding of the dynamics, had an understanding of the behavior, then said, right, okay, we need to stop that now. Let's stop. Let's regroup as a team. Let's work out where we need to go next. And they took that back, that responsibility back, that ownership back, and then started functioning again as a team. But not all teams did. And some had a reliance on that shaper for a long period of time. And that's fine, but perhaps the shaper at that point really did need to have some input when it came to strategic planning. They've got you somewhere, they need more input now, but people are less likely to give them input because they were seen as the one person who had all of the answers. And we can see this for all of the team roles. Like I said, we need all 9 behaviours. It doesn't mean 9 people. We've all got more than one strength that we can play to. And we're all needed at different times. But sometimes there can be an over-reliance on that, especially when the pressure is on. So when a team needs to exploit opportunities, if it's been identified that you're not looking outside of the organisation enough, you may put the resource investigator first and foremost and say, right, you're driving this part. We need to see what other people are doing. Use your contacts. And that's fine unless there is an over-reliance on that resource investigator to then go into parts of the project which actually they don't have the strengths in. When somebody's needed to orchestrate team effort with a coordinator, when somebody's really looking to regroup the team, to delegate, to redefine purpose and mission. Again, it's great at the right time and place to find the coordinator there, but not to keep it. So when there is a need to increase the pace and arrive at decisions, that shaper behavior we've already spoken about. When the team needs somebody to choose between competing options, that monitor evaluator is critical. It's critical, and some teams don't listen to their monitor evaluator enough. It's critical that they are brought in to be able to make the right decision, but then allow them to go again. We don't want to keep them there. Can you see how it happened with that team role strain as you're asking somebody to take responsibility, not just for their part of the objective, for the bit where they can make the most of their contribution, but then for the rest of it can really cause problems. The completer finisher. Sometimes we see this when everybody's just, the standards, it's actually vital that no mistakes are made. So it's the responsibility of the completer finisher at this point. And it remains the responsibility of the completer finisher, who then becomes a real sort of like stops things from happening. because everything lands at their desk and they don't have time to deal with everything. So it's about using the right team role behavior for the right time within a project, and understanding that sometimes this sole savior, they are the savior, but the team needs to realize that it's only for a limited time, because the more they focus on one, the less responsibility, the more not our problem it becomes, and therefore the team dynamics really do go. We then have that dynamic duo. I don't know if you've seen it in teams. We sometimes see it where it's almost like a break off. So you have this twosome that is really effective. Again, in the same way as the soul team are really effective together, and the rest of the team, because they are under so much pressure, goes, oh, over to you. That's fine. We're going to let you do whatever it is that you need to do. We trust you. You seem to be giving us the direction, or whatever it is that they seem to be doing. Their team are reliant upon this wonderful duo. But what sometimes happens is that the duo get carried away, and they forget to feed back to the rest of the team, and they start just having their own team dynamics and listening to their own echo chamber. Yeah, this will work, won't it? Yes, they've only got one other person to bounce it off. Just be aware of this. Again, this is one of the reasons why teams don't work well. They're putting too much reliance on a duo, and we've seen this quite a lot within teams. Personally, I've seen it with high shaper resource investigator combinations, because they both get on really well because they're both high energy. They're both wanting to do different things. They're not interested in necessarily the detail or the process or checking it's right. They're quite entrepreneurial, aren't they? Those two teams. You're looking together, you've got a real entrepreneurial element to it, and they go off. And the team says it's okay because they're doing their things, it's doing their things, but actually they've gone too far. And the team really does struggle. We just need to watch out for that. Okay. So what have we had so far? We've had the scapegoat, we've had the sole savior, and then we've had the dynamic duo. I don't know if any of these you recognize, any are resonating at the moment. In the paper by Anand and Barso, they then talk about two other modes of operating that teams that are self-sabotaging fall into, that of fight mode and that of flight mode. So we have fight mode, fixated on a common enemy. It's not our fault, it's head office. It's not our fault, it's the environment. It's not our fault, it's the competitors. Really closing ranks there. And the blame is not put within. They're not able to look at that anymore. Something is always somebody else's fault. And that's the reason why they are in the situation that they are. Now, we have a case study on our website which kind of touches on this. It's we worked with distributors in North America, worked with Xerox, and they had a new printer. And this is riveting, but they had a new printer. And it was all this brand new tech, all this new IP. It was amazing. It was called the Color Cube. And they were really running behind on the delivery of this to the product launch. And every day that they didn't launch, it was costing them thousands. And they didn't understand why. And so they went back to these teams. It was all over the world. It was a fantastic setup. It's really interesting. But they found two teams just competing against each other. The reason it's not working is because of them. The reason it's not working is because of them. And they'd got too competitive. And interestingly, each of the teams had a really distinctive team role distribution, neither of which were balanced. One was very social and the other one was very thinking role balanced. So there was a real clash because they were different. And therefore, it was really easy to be able to blame the other team for the reason having that fight mode in there. And flight mode, just avoidance. Not even raising their head, where teams are there licking their wounds. They're withdrawing, they're trying to ward off that anxiety by really coming in. And again, we've seen this in so many of the teams that we work with. Okay, so you've got these different modes, different ways that self-sabotaging teams sort of show themselves, how the behaviors manifest, because what we're looking at here is symptoms, aren't we? We're looking, thinking, well, this is happening. Why is that happening? What are the symptoms? Are they blaming somebody else with the scapegoat? Are they having somebody they're pinning all of their hopes to in the sole survivor, or perhaps the duo they're pinning their hopes to? Have they gone into fight mode when it's somebody else's fault, or are they really, really licking their wounds and they've gone into flight mode? Where is the team? Like I said at the beginning, it's quite a simplistic, but I think a wonderful way of trying to diagnose where the team is to be able to help them move forward. The paper echoes what we say all the time, which is always a good thing, isn't it? And they say, well, people say, well, what do you need to do? Well, there isn't a quick fix. We say this so many times that teams aren't fixed by just a workshop or an away day, just by doing Belbin, just by doing something else. Teams need more than that. You can address the symptoms, you can try and help, but actually it's breaking the team down and giving them the processes that they probably didn't have in the first place to be able to stop self-sabotaging. They need to think in different ways. They need to behave in different ways. You need to break the team down. You need to stop and almost take all the pieces out, clean each bit up, have a plan to how they're going to be put together, and then start again. And it takes time, it takes commitment to be able to do this. So often, people think, well, we've had our team away day now. That's fine, isn't it? No, 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 no. That's the beginning. It's always the beginning. Being able to be on the journey to high performance as a team is a long one. And it's one that you have to keep going on and on and on. There is no quick fix. So what would we recommend is that you go back to basics with that team that are feeling under pressure. They're feeling stressed. They're not going to achieve. They're not performing. So what we need to do is go back to basics, stop and revisit the why. What is the team's purpose? What are the objectives? What are the timescales, the stakeholders? What does it mean that? Where do we fit within the larger organization? What are the knock-on effects to other teams? Let's work this out. What is the team there to do? What is it there to achieve? Because unless you've got that, you can't really measure anything else. You can't really help with anything else. And this isn't about telling the team to stop and then giving them their purpose and their objectives. This needs to be understood by all. Spending time to make sure that everybody is on exactly the same page is critical. Otherwise, you think you've got agreement to what the objectives are, and then you'll have 7 different paths going off from that meeting. It's bringing it back. Spend time here. Then we need to know what's needed. What does the team need to be able to hit its objectives? And here we're looking at the functional roles and the team roles. It's a combination of what skills you're bringing to the team and what behaviours you're bringing to the team. And only then, when you've worked it out in terms of behaviours, and we know we need all 9 Belbin Team Role behaviours, we know what functional skills we need as well. Then we start with the who. Who is going to fulfil each of those roles? What is the contribution you're asking of everybody? Because often that happens as well, doesn't it, when teams get quite stressy? People don't know what's expected of them. So we need clarity, right? We're expecting this from you at this point of the project, of when we're working together. When this happens, this is your input. This is where we see you making impact within the team. But it's all well and good you understanding where you're going to make your impact. Everybody else needs to know everybody else's impact. And then we need to have some rules of how that's going to happen. So some rules of engagement. When things go wrong, what happens when? When 2 people are working together and the world gets quite stressy, what are we going to do? So working out and having an action plan, a rules of engagement, a contract. We've talked before about social contracts, having contracts between individuals within the team and the team itself. Is how are they going to work together? What are the rules of engagement? And again, ensuring clarity here, because when things go wrong, it's nice to go back to a process, going back to clarity to be able to redefine what it is you need to do next. I always like to put a picture of Meredith in wherever I can. I need to go and see him this week. I didn't see him last week. It's just a bit rude for me. We've banned him from the office. He's now just enjoying his gorgeous garden. He'll be 98 in June. And I tend to go and see him once a week, which is a delight and an absolute privilege. Anyway, I digress. Meredith Belbin said quite rightly that a team is not a bunch of people with job titles. It's a congregation of individuals, each of whom has a role that is understood by other members. To help our teams, people need to understand what that contribution is. They understand the contribution of everybody else within the team. It's critical. It's critical. It's not about just putting people together and hoping that they'll work as a team. We need to do more than that. So how does the language of Belbin come in? How can we use this? Well, using the language of Belbin means that it's not personal. Belbin is a wonderful practical language that describes our behaviour. It describes the what we do. It doesn't describe the who we are. Now, obviously, who we are has an impact on what we do, but it's not the be all and end all. So what we're looking at, what we're observing, is we're observing behaviours. We're not observing personalities. We're not observing what makes you you. We're observing what you do. How does that manifest itself in? And it may be slightly different depending on which teams that you're working with. And because this gives you a wonderful common language about the way that you behave, it's incredibly practical and is just immediately understood by all. It allows us to have conversations as we were having before. Look, we're in a sea of, I don't know, plant and resource investigator ideas. We need a little bit of implementer. It's not the implementer's fault if they keep saying, yes, but how are we going to do that? Again, we can understand and use that language to the best of our abilities to help the team. The other key thing about Belbin is that it's validated. We see this a fair bit actually. When people have completed a questionnaire which is just on them, and they fill a questionnaire in and it says you are A, or you may be A, B, and C. And people go, yeah, that's really me. I get that. Oh, it really resonates. And the rest of the team are going, nope, nope, completely, they don't have a level of self-awareness. And so what we're talking about is a language. It isn't just about how you want to describe yourself. It's you get feedback from people in the team. We call them observer assessments. And we're able to use that as a validation of the roles that people are playing. So important. Apparently, only 15% of us have really high self-awareness. It's interesting, isn't it? So therefore, why would you rely on a team language that is based just on that if it's not going to be that accurate? It's getting that validity check from the observers, which is key. It's practical, already said that. And also that language can be woven into the team. I'm sure you've heard, even if you haven't used Belbin before, people saying, oh, we need a completer finisher. That's normally from me. Or has anybody monitor evaluated that? Oh, we need some shaper. That language is easily used by the team. It's one that everybody gets, everybody understands. So using the language of Belbin can really help. It can help those teams work better together. It can help those teams stop self-sabotaging, stop doing things that are getting in the way of their objectives. It's not going to be the be all and end all. Just by doing Belbin doesn't mean that your teams are going to be high performing, but it gives you a language to be able to go on that journey of high performing. I think that's critical. Yeah, it's not the be all and end all. It's not that you've done this, everything's sorted. It is the beginning. And it's a really solid beginning because obviously Belbin is a team tool. It's all about teams. Okay. So where were we? Fixing self-sabotaging teams. Teams that do things that block their success and which prevent them from accomplishing goals. It tends to happen when teams are under a lot of stress, when they're under a lot of pressure, and they don't have the built-in mechanisms to be able to deal with it. It can manifest itself in many ways, and the paper in the Harvard Business Review by Anand and Barso talk about this in 5 different categories. 5 different symptoms present themselves, whether or not it's the scapegoat, the person who's being blamed for everything, whether or not it's the sole survivor that's the wrong word, isn't it? The person who's going to save you, that's it, isn't it? Sole savior. He's going to help the team go forward, or that dynamic duo, or maybe they're just against the world. They're in fight mode, or maybe they're licking their wounds in flight mode. So it's an interesting way of looking at things. Using the language of Belbin can help with those teams understand the contributions and putting together a mechanism of how they're going to work together in the future when the teams don't work so well. How can you find out more? Well, how can we help your teams? Well, you could become the expert. You could become Belbin accredited and you could really become the team expert for your teams, for your organization, for your clients. Understand how to easily look through those reports and go, that's the reason why, that's where we need to focus. Become a guru, become a ninja, a Belbin ninja, being able to go and help those teams become Team Role accredited. Use the reports. They're available to all. You don't have to be accredited to use them. One of our values here at Belbin is that we want Belbin to be accessible to all. We have been around as an organisation for over 35 years, and we don't want Belbin just to be in the higher echelons of management consultancy. We want anybody, any manager, any team member to be able to access them. And this is why you can go on our website and you can purchase any of the reports. And we're here in the office, physically there to take your call if you have any problems. If you want to hear how other people use Belbin with their teams, if you want to hear about how people are using it alongside trust, psychological safety, how some case studies of when it's worked really well, some changing of culture, come along to our conference. We've got 2 days of amazing input from people all over the globe, telling us how they have used Belbins to really help turn around their teams. Obviously, all of those details will be on the email that we send afterwards. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for spending the last 40 minutes hearing about teams, the ones that self-sabotage, the ones that need your help, the ones that are really crying out and saying, we need an intervention here because we don't know how to reach our objectives. We hope that the language of Belbin can help, and we hope that this webinar is just giving you a taster of how we can help you help your teams. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for listening through if it's on the recording. I hope you put it on double speed. And if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat or just email us. Just email team@belbin.com, or if you want to email myself, it's jo, @belbin.com, and we would be delighted to hear from you. So thank you very much. I will stay here for a few more minutes in case there are any questions. Some people like to ask at the end. But if not, have a wonderful rest of the day. Have a wonderful rest of the week. And I hope the sun is shining where you are. Thank you very much. Thank you, David. Okay, I'm going to go now. I'm going to go and get a cup of tea. Lovely to see you all. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, hello, Sylvia. I've just seen your comment now. They're all coming in. I think there's a delay. Wonderful. Lovely. Still in New York. My goodness, you're up early. Thank you. Right, I'm definitely going now. Speak to you soon. Bye.